Hi, this is my session report of a Hackmaster campaign titled Road to Frandor. This is the introduction for the campaign, and it contains spoilers of the training dungeon that can be downloaded for free from the Cancer & Company website. I'm going to put the link in the description below. If you don't know what Hackmaster is, I recommend that you watch my reviews for that role-playing game. I'll put the links in the description below as well. And if you are planning to run this adventure using 0 level characters, I recommend that you take the weapons and the shield away from the skeletons in certain rooms, because it makes the adventure a lot more lethal, considering that 0 level characters are a bit more fragile. Well, the story begins with 4 adventurers. A dwarf named Fargan Farrowell. He's a thief by trade, but he developed those skills because he's the son of a locksmith, and he learned quite a bit about the different mechanisms concerning doors and locks. He was working as a caravan guard with his friend, the gnome titan fighter known as Silo Davas. Silo comes from a military family, and he seeks to use his talent for violence in the most constructive way and fun as possible way. And our other adventurers are Thurb Riv, an unorthodox for a fucky cleric, because he follows the teachings of the Eternal Lantern instead of other more totemic or tribal deities. He uses his barbaric ferocity to punish the creatures of the night. And you also have Elegasto Devan. Elegasto is an overweight snob that hides an unpolished heart of gold. His brilliant mind allowed him to become a self-taught mage after reading some books in his grandfather's library. These 4 friends came together because Thurb and Elegasto are the sons of parents who had business together. That is, Thurb's mother and father sold pearls to Elegasto's parents, and they participated in different business ventures. And as an excuse to get out of their boring life, Thurb and Elegasto decided to travel with the caravan, which was guarded by Fargan and Silo. At one particular time, that caravan was attacked by a group of bandits, and the 4 individuals came together and they drove away those bandits, and they developed a lot of admiration between each other, at least as much as you can admire a human from a dwarven perspective and a gnome titan perspective. And after talking for a bit, they decided to form an adventuring group because they saw that their talents worked really well together. And so their story begins as they leave the caravan and go off into what Elegasto recommends as an objective for their career as adventurers, which is Frandor's Keep. But to get to Frandor's Keep, they need to go through the village of Vaux, and they also want to gain a bit more experience before going to Frandor's Keep, because that's a very somewhat dangerous and professional inclined place where only the best can survive. So our story continues with the 4 adventurers walking through a forest about 10 a.m. in the morning. The adventurers kept walking, and they found it quite strange that this early autumn morning was somewhat more moist and cold than they expected it to be. Eventually they stumbled upon this corpse in the middle of the forest that had a single piece of cloth within one of its hands. The piece of cloth turned out to be a map, and Elegasto, being quite skilled at reading maps, was quite confident that he could read the map and find the place indicated on it. So, hungry for gold and magical knowledge and magical items, the adventurers decided to get there as soon as possible before reaching Vaux, in case someone else was trying to get to that place first. Once they arrived at the place indicated by the map, they found this huge rock And after searching around it, they decided that they needed to push the rock and see if there was something underneath it. And it took the effort of all 4 adventurers, and they managed to move it out of the way, and they found a set of stone steps that led down into ominous darkness. After lighting their oil lamps with the help of Thurb, who, as a cleric of the Cathedral of Light, was quite skilled at lighting torches and lamps, they went down and found this empty stone room. It looked somewhat primitive in its architecture, but Fargen was able to identify that a section on the floor was quite different from the rest of the room. It was probably some sort of mechanism, in the worst of cases maybe a trap of sorts. So he tried to identify it and disarm it, but he wasn't as skilled. Silo, in typical Gnome Titan humor, decided to tie a rope around Fargen's waist and had him jump up and down that section, saying that everything would be fine, that they would be able to pull him just in time in case something went wrong. But nothing happened, so the more obese person in the group, being Elegasto, who usually wears these somewhat elegant and flashy clothes to hide his overweight condition, he took hold of the rope and started jumping up and down with Fargen, and yes, it was a pit trap and they almost fell down it, but Thurb and Silo managed to hold the silk rope in time and pull them to safety as soon as they went down, so nobody was harmed, nobody suffered any nasty falls. After securing the silk rope, they went down the pit trap and they entered, after searching for secret passages, they entered this other room that was also empty, but there was a set of stone doors right in the east wall, and in the north and south walls there were wooden doors. Fargen also identified a section of the floor in which looked quite suspicious, but he could not identify if it was a trap or how this mechanism was activated. He said it was probably the same as the other room, a pit trap. So they decided to investigate the north wooden door first. The wooden door revealed a room empty except for a single stone sarcophagus in the center of it, at the center. And Fargen wasn't too enthusiastic about the idea, but he told the other adventurers to stay outside the room and he would check for traps. And he went inside, searched around the sarcophagus, and he did find a nasty trap. It was probably going to shoot something out, so he tried his best to disarm it. However, he could not do it, and this green smoke came out of the sarcophagus, and Fargen started choking on it. He felt like his lungs were burning, and he was very clean dwarf. He hated to be dirty, and he felt like he was covered in something yucky, and he went a bit nuts. So he wanted to get out of there as soon as possible, but just after he went to the entrance, and just before going out of the dungeon, he found out that he wasn't in pain anymore, so he decided to let it be and go back down into the dungeon. Before doing that, he decided to put some branches on top of the stone steps, so if some other person came by, he wouldn't see the entrance. So they continued going back into the room with the sarcophagus. After opening the sarcophagus, they found a skeleton within it with a golden key around its neck and a scimitar in its right hand. They were positive that the skeleton was going to rise up. Thurb was especially skilled in the ways of battling undead, and was convinced that unless they used blunt weapons and magic, the skeleton would be quite impossible to defeat. So they took battle positions, with Elegasto standing in one corner ready with a spell, and Silo and Thurb readied their mace, and Thurb had a mace and Silo used his warhammer, and they were ready to take a whack at the skeleton. And Fargen had a dagger, so he won't be quite useful in the fight. So it was Thurb's and Silo's plan to attack the skeleton before it knew what hit it, if it had conscience at all or awareness. So immediately Silo attacked the skeleton with his warhammer, opening a nasty crack on the skeleton's skull, but it would have been destroyed if it weren't for the fact that the skeleton moved to the side just in time. It got up and it slashed at Silo, almost cutting the Gnome Titan's head, but the Gnome Titan stumbled back a bit. He managed to lift his left arm in defense, and he got a really nasty cut across his left wrist, on the back of the wrist, and he stumbled backwards. He slammed against the wall and ended up being knocked out for the rest of the battle. So Thurb immediately attacked the skeleton and managed to crack its ribcage a bit, and in desperation, seeing as how things were somewhat turning sour, Fargen attacked with his dagger, and to surprise of the entire group, he actually managed to cut a bit of the vertebrae on the skeleton, but that was not enough. Luckily, Elegasto prepared his Fire Finger spell and managed to burn the skeleton down. After searching and finding nothing but a pretty old and almost useless scimitar and this golden key, they decided to take the key, and they thought that perhaps it was used on the double doors on the east wall in the other room. After waking Silo up, Silo was quite sad because the wound he suffered on the back of his wrist had left permanent damage, and by Thurb's estimation he needed a highly skilled healer, probably a very powerful cleric, to heal that permanent damage. In the meantime, he would be somewhat crippled when performing an attack. They left that room and went to the south door, and they found another room like it with a sarcophagus in the center. This time Fargen was able to disarm the trap, which seemed to be a lot more dangerous because the entire room was covered in miniature holes. There was probably going to be some sort of explosion or chemical agent coming out of any of those out of the holes on the walls and the ceiling. But Fargen managed to do his job, and they found another skeleton. And to the dismay of all the members in the group, Elegasto was out of magical power. So Thurb mumbled a few things about how he should have been studying magic more and eating and drinking less. But they once again took position, and they prepared for the worst. As soon as they opened the sarcophagus, Silo attacked and scored a nice hit against the skeleton. Then Fargen attacked with his dagger, but he wasn't lucky this time, and the skeleton retaliated by attacking Fargen, who managed to duck just in time, but he got a nasty cut before that across near his collarbone. Luckily, Thurb scored a really nice strike against the skeleton. It almost shattered the skeleton's left arm. The skeleton dropped a shield because this skeleton was armed with a shield and scimitar, and the skeleton stumbled out of balance, and Silo was able to finish the fight attacking with his warhammer, and the skeleton was shattered. They managed to recover another golden key and went back into the room, and Silo suggested that each adventurer should take the hands of another adventurer who was a bit more lightweight, and have them stand in front of the door when they were using the keys, in case this section of the floor gave away like the other pit trap. And that section did give away as soon as the keys were used to open the set of double doors. They almost fell down, but their companions managed to pull them up just in time, and they revealed this passageway just behind the stone doors. Fargen started examining the passageway and found a couple of pit traps that again he could not identify and disarm, so it was again trial and error, and they made their way through thankfully, because the pit traps weren't as deep as the others. They managed to go down the pit trap and up the pit trap and again down and up, and reached the end of the corridor which disappointedly turned out to be a dead end. Everybody started to search for secret doors and secret passages, but everyone failed except Elegasto, who managed to find the secret passage and that led to a room with a chest at the end of it. Fargen examined the chest, and after sneezing conveniently upon the dusty treasure chest, he found out that there was this sort of like a launcher of darts or some piercing object, and he managed to disarm this trap. And within the treasure chest there were all sorts of treasures from a bygone era, but quite practical. Some pieces of armor, some crossbow bolts, and a beautiful statuette, a golden statuette of a dove. And they managed to take the statuette and all the treasure, and after navigating through the pit traps and going back to the entrance, they eventually managed to reach the village of Vu and brag about their adventures and gain a bit of fame in the process. Thanks for watching this session report of the introduction to the Road to Frandr campaign. I'm going to put a note with the software that I used to create this video, or at least a bit of the software, because I also use this Cyberlink Media Suite to create the video, but I also use some other graphics and songs as well, etc. If you have any comments or questions, please let me know. See you later.